The room buzzed with laughter and the clink of crystal glasses. Elon Musk, seated at the head of the table in a private dining room of L'Ambroisie, a world-renowned French restaurant in Los Angeles, was in his element. His friends, a mix of tech moguls, artists, and celebrities, reveled in their usual banter, fueled by expensive wine and even more expensive egos. "You're a genius, Elon," teased Martin Lively, a brash venture capitalist known for his sharp tongue. "But let's be honest, your world is so far removed from reality. Do you even know how to live like the rest of us?" Elon raised a brow, intrigued. "Define the rest of us, Martin," he replied, his voice calm yet challenging. "You know, like a normal person," Martin continued, grinning. "No SpaceX, no Teslas, no Mars colonies, no billion-dollar safety net. Could you handle that? Could you, say, fall in love with someone completely outside your circle? Like a regular person with a regular life?" Laughter erupted around the table, but Elon's eyes narrowed. He leaned back, tapping his fingers on the edge of his glass. "Is that a dare?" he asked, his tone as calculated as the trajectory of a Falcon 9 rocket. "It's a challenge," Martin said, smirking. "Find someone ordinary, no supermodels, no tech-savvy investors, no influencers. Someone real. Marry them. Prove you can actually connect without all the glitz." The table fell silent, the audacity of the suggestion hanging in the air. Elon, never one to back down from a challenge, smiled faintly. "All right," he said, his voice steady, "but it has to be my choice." Just then, the doors to the private dining room opened, and a waitress walked in, carrying a tray of desserts. She was petite, with caramel-colored skin, dark curls pinned back in a loose bun, and eyes that sparkled with a mixture of politeness and exhaustion. Her name tag read Anna. "Your soufflés, gentlemen," she said, her tone professional but kind. She moved around the table gracefully, completely unaware of the gazes that lingered on her. Elon's eyes followed her. Something about her unassuming demeanor, so far removed from the polished, rehearsed personas he was used to, caught his attention. As she leaned over to place a plate in front of him, their eyes met briefly. "Thank you, Anna," he said, reading her name tag aloud. "You're welcome," she replied with a small smile before leaving the room. When the door closed behind her, Elon turned back to the table. "I've found my candidate." The room erupted into laughter again, but Elon didn't join in. His expression remained contemplative, his mind already racing with the possibilities. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't thinking about rockets, algorithms, or earnings reports. Instead, his thoughts lingered on the waitress who had unknowingly stepped into the orbit of his latest experiment. The night air outside L'Ambroisie was crisp, tinged with the faint scent of citrus trees lining the avenue. Anna stood near the valet station, pulling her thin cardigan tightly around her shoulders. Her shift had ended, and she was waiting for her ride, a dented Toyota Corolla shared with two roommates. From the shadows of the valet area, a figure emerged, the click of his shoes sharp against the cobblestones. Anna glanced up and froze. It was him, the man from the private dining room. "Excuse me," Elon Musk said, his voice casual but direct. Anna blinked, unsure whether to be flattered or alarmed. She had recognized him earlier, of course. Who wouldn't recognize Elon Musk? But she never imagined he'd step out of his world to approach her. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. Elon studied her for a moment, his hands in his pockets, before saying, "I have a proposition for you." Anna tilted her head, half amused, half confused. "A proposition?" "Yes." Elon stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I'd like to ask you something unusual, and I hope you'll hear me out." She crossed her arms, intrigued despite herself. "Unusual. You don't strike me as the kind of guy who does usual things." He smiled faintly. "Touché. Well, here it is. Would you consider marrying me?" For a second, the world seemed to stop. Anna stared at him, waiting for the punchline, but his expression remained steady. She let out a nervous laugh. "You're kidding, right? Did one of your friends put you up to this?" "No," he said firmly. "I'm completely serious." Anna shifted uncomfortably, glancing around to see if anyone else was witnessing this bizarre interaction. Okay, let's say I believe you. Why on earth would you want to marry someone you just met? A stranger, at that. Elon clasped his hands behind his back, his tone turning more earnest. I'm conducting a social experiment of sorts. I want to prove that human connection can transcend social and financial boundaries. That love, or at least compatibility, isn't dictated by status or wealth. Anna raised an eyebrow. So, I be what? Your experiment. Not in a demeaning way, Elon replied quickly. I think you're fascinating, Anna. I could see that in the brief moments we interacted. You're genuine, authentic, and I think there's something to be learned from that. Aha, she said, her skepticism growing. And what's in it for me? Fame, a fancy lifestyle. He shook his head. I'm not offering you fame or a lifestyle. I'm offering a chance to challenge the idea of what relationships are supposed to look like. If you agree, you'll have my word that I'll respect your autonomy. No strings attached, except the ones we create together. Anna laughed again, this time with more disbelief. You know how insane this sounds, right? People don't just get married on a whim, especially not to billionaires. Insanity often precedes innovation, Elon said, his eyes glinting with that unmistakable spark of audacity that had propelled him to global fame. Her ride pulled up, its headlights slicing through the conversation. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the door handle. You're serious, she said finally. Dead serious, he replied. I don't even know you, she pointed out. Then let's start there, he said. Have dinner with me tomorrow. No pressure, no obligations. Just a conversation. Anna paused, torn between curiosity and caution. This was absurd, but there was something about the calm intensity in his voice, the way he seemed completely unbothered by the impossibility of his request, that made her wonder. Fine, she said at last, sliding into the passenger seat. Dinner, but don't expect me to wear a wedding dress anytime soon. Elon smiled, stepping back as the car pulled away. We'll see about that, he murmured to himself, watching the taillights disappear into the night. The following days unfolded like a fever dream for Anna. After their first dinner, a private affair at a quiet rooftop bistro where Elon's charm had proven oddly disarming, things escalated quickly. His persistence, coupled with a peculiar sincerity, left her both bewildered and intrigued. Before she could fully grasp the magnitude of the situation, she found herself agreeing to the unthinkable, a wedding. Standing in front of a full-length mirror in a lavish bridal suite, Anna smoothed the delicate lace of her off-white dress. The gown, a gift from one of Elon's connections in the fashion world, fit her perfectly, though it felt strangely out of place. She took a deep breath, her reflection staring back at her with wide, uncertain eyes. You sure you're ready for this, Anna? She whispered to herself. A knock at the door broke her reverie. Clara, Elon's efficient and impeccably dressed assistant, peeked in. The car's ready, she said. It's time, Anna nodded, grabbing the small bouquet of lilies resting on the vanity. As she followed Clara down the hallway, she felt her heart pounding against her ribcage. Every step felt heavier than the last, her mind racing with questions she couldn't fully answer. Was she crazy for agreeing to this? Or was this some once-in-a-lifetime leap of faith she'd regret missing? The ceremony was set to take place at an exclusive vineyard just outside Los Angeles, surrounded by rolling hills and endless rows of grapevines. Elon had kept the guest list small, only a handful of witnesses, including his closest confidants and a few of her co-workers, whom he insisted she invite. The setup was elegant yet understated, with a simple arch adorned with white roses and fairy lights. When Anna arrived, Elon was already standing at the altar, dressed in a sleek navy suit that somehow managed to look effortless and commanding at the same time. His expression was calm, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. You look beautiful, he said quietly as she approached. Thanks, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't look so bad yourself. The officiant, a retired judge Elon had personally chosen, began the ceremony without delay. As the words flowed, vows, promises, the weight of commitment. Anna felt a surreal haze settle over her. Do you, Elon, take Anna to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, he said, his voice steady, though there was an unexpected warmth in his gaze. And do you, Anna, take Elon to be your lawfully wedded husband? Anna hesitated, her breath catching. She looked into Elon's eyes, searching for a flicker of something, anything, that would reassure her she wasn't making the biggest mistake of her life. I do, she said finally, her voice trembling but firm. The ceremony concluded, and the small gathering erupted into polite applause. Elon leaned in, brushing a soft kiss against her cheek before pulling back. Congratulations, Mrs. Musk, he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Don't get used to it, she replied, though her tone held no bite. The reception was brief, a dinner beneath the stars with soft music playing in the background. Despite the intimate setting, Anna felt like she was floating through someone else's life, disconnected and dazed. Guests offered congratulations, clinking glasses, and exchanging curious glances. Later, as they sat side by side in the back seat of a sleek black car heading toward Elon's sprawling Bel Air estate, Anna finally spoke. So, this is it, she said, staring out the window at the darkened cityscape. This is just the beginning, Elon replied, his tone neutral yet confident. Do you always move this fast? She asked, turning to face him. He chuckled softly. When I see potential, I act on it. It's how I've always been. Anna sighed, leaning back against the leather seat. Let's hope your instincts are as good with people as they are with rockets. Elon didn't respond immediately. Instead, he watched her, his expression unreadable, as if calculating the trajectory of their improbable union. For Anna, the night felt like the start of something entirely unpredictable, a leap into uncharted territory with a man she barely knew, and whose world she still couldn't comprehend. But beneath her unease was a spark of curiosity, the faintest flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, this wild gamble would lead her somewhere she hadn't expected. Anna awoke the next morning to a blinding wall of light pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Elon's mansion. She rolled over, still disoriented, and blinked at the unfamiliar opulence around her. Ornate furniture, sleek modern accents, and automated blinds that silently responded to the slightest touch. It felt like waking up in a sci-fi movie, but the serene silence of the house was shattered as soon as she checked her phone. Her notifications were on fire. Social media, news sites, even random people from her past had bombarded her with messages. Her name, Anna Torres, a once unknown waitress, was now trending across platforms worldwide. The headlines were merciless. Elon Musk marries McDonald's waitress. True love or another experiment. Gold digger or Cinderella. The internet weighs in on Anna Torres. Elon Musk's bizarre social experiment takes another turn. Anna's stomach twisted. She hadn't expected this level of scrutiny. Photos from the wedding, including unflattering close-ups, were plastered everywhere. Paparazzi had somehow found their way to the vineyard despite the tight security. She pulled on a robe and wandered downstairs, her bare feet sinking into plush carpeting. The kitchen, like everything else in the house, was a masterpiece of modern design, its sleek countertops glowing under the natural sunlight. Elon was already there, sipping coffee and scanning his tablet, his expression unreadable. "You're trending," he said without looking up. "Yeah, I noticed," Anna replied flatly, sinking into a chair. Elon set the tablet down and looked at her. "Does it bother you?" "Does it bother me?" she repeated, incredulous. "I'm being called a gold digger and a fame chaser by people who don't even know me. What do you think?" He studied her for a moment, his sharp blue eyes narrowing. "They'll lose interest eventually. The media cycle is short." Anna laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. You're used to this. I just wanted to live my life. Now I'm public property." "You knew this would happen," he said, his tone not unkind but matter-of-fact. "No, Elon. I knew it would be strange, but I didn't sign up to be dissected like some kind of specimen." She shook her head. "And you don't even seem to care." This is just another game to you, isn't it? His expression darkened. You think this is a game? I don't know what to think, she shot back. 1 minute, I'm working double shifts at McDonald's to pay rent, and the next, I'm married to the richest man in the world. Do you have any idea what that's like? Elon leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. You agreed to this, he said, his voice low but firm. You knew it wouldn't be simple. Anna glared at him, her frustration boiling over. I agreed because you made it sound like this big, noble experiment. But I'm starting to think I'm just your latest project. Something to prove a point to your billionaire buddies. The silence that followed was deafening. Elon didn't respond immediately, his gaze fixed on her, unflinching. Before he could say anything, the doorbell rang, its chime echoing through the house. Anna frowned. Are you expecting someone? Probably the press, Elon muttered, rising from his chair. He grabbed his phone, glanced at the security feed, and sighed. No worse. It's Martin. Martin. Anna asked, confused. The friend who dared me, he explained, his tone clipped. Moments later, Martin lively strolled into the kitchen, his tailored suit and smug grin a stark contrast to Anna's frazzled state. Well, well, Martin said, spreading his arms dramatically. I see you took the challenge seriously, Musk. His eyes flicked to Anna, appraising her like she was a museum exhibit. And this must be the lucky bride, Anna. Was it? Anna folded her arms, not bothering to hide her annoyance. That's me. Charming, Martin said, smirking. I have to admit, I didn't think you'd actually do Elon. But here we are. Quite the spectacle. Elon's jaw tightened. What do you want, Martins? Oh, nothing. Just checking in on the happy couple, he said, his tone dripping with mock sincerity. And I have to say, Anna, you're handling the attention remarkably well. Most people would crumble under the pressure. Anna's cheeks flushed, but she kept her voice steady. Well, most people don't marry on a dare. Martin raised an eyebrow, clearly entertained. Touché. That's enough, Elon said coldly. If you've made your point, you can leave. Martin shrugged, unfazed. Relax, Elon. I'm just here to remind you that you've got an audience now. Everyone's watching to see how this little experiment of yours plays out. He turned to Anna with a grin. Good luck, Mrs. Musk. You're going to need it. As Martin strolled out, Anna felt a wave of nausea. The weight of what she'd gotten herself into pressed down on her like a lead blanket. Elon returned to his seat, but this time, he didn't meet her gaze. In that moment, Anna realized two things. Elon's detachment wasn't just his personality, it was his armor. And whatever this marriage was supposed to be, it was clear she was on her own. Anna's days in Elon's sprawling Bel Air estate unfolded like a surreal dream, one that teetered between awe and isolation. The mansion, a marvel of futuristic design, featured walls of glass that offered breathtaking views of the Los Angeles skyline. But to Anna, the transparency felt less like freedom and more like a cage. The staff, while polite, kept their distance. Clara, Elon's assistant, ensured every detail of Anna's life was meticulously planned. Clothing options from world-class designers delivered daily, a personal chef crafting meals that looked too perfect to eat, and a driver always on call. Yet none of it felt real. She wandered the halls alone most days, her footsteps echoing off the sleek, minimalist interiors. Elon was always busy, holed up in his office, taking endless calls or flying off to meetings in other cities. Even when he was home, he was consumed by his work, his presence more like that of a fleeting shadow than a husband. One evening, Anna found herself in the library, a cavernous room filled with books that looked untouched. She ran her fingers over the spines, pausing when she came across a volume on classical philosophy. She opened it, scanning the pages, when a voice startled her. Do you read philosophy often? Anna turned to see Elon standing in the doorway, his hands tucked into the pockets of his tailored trousers. Not really, she admitted, closing the book. But I figured why not? I've got nothing but time. Elon stepped into the room, his gaze thoughtful. You could use that time for something meaningful, he said. Anna bristled. Meaningful like what? Start a tech company. Launch a rocket to Mars. Elon didn't react to her sarcasm. Instead, he walked over to one of the windows, gazing out at the glittering city below. "This house, this life, it's not for everyone," he said quietly. "Yeah, I've noticed," Anna replied, crossing her arms. "You know, for someone who wanted to prove that relationships can transcend barriers, you don't seem very interested in actually building one." He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "It's not that I'm uninterested," he said. "I just have priorities." "Priorities," Anna repeated, her voice tinged with bitterness. "Like work, and more work. That's who I am," Elon said simply, as though it explained everything. "And who am I in all this?" she asked, her voice rising. "The girl who agreed to play along for some bizarre social experiment? Because it sure doesn't feel like I'm your wife." Elon hesitated, his usually unshakable demeanor faltering. "I never intended for this to feel transactional," he said. "But it does," Anna snapped. "You're so focused on your grand ideas that you can't see the person right in front of you." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Elon looked away, as though the city lights offered answers he couldn't find in her eyes. "I'm not good at this," he admitted finally. "Yeah, no kidding," Anna said, her voice softer now, but no less firm. "But if you don't start trying, there won't be anything left to save." Elon didn't reply, and Anna, exhausted from the weight of it all, left the room. The loneliness only deepened in the days that followed. The media frenzy around their marriage showed no signs of slowing. Paparazzi camped outside the state gates, drones buzzed overhead, and gossip sites churned out stories daily. Every step Anna took was scrutinized, every expression dissected. "Smile more," Clara suggested one morning as Anna flipped through a magazine featuring yet another speculative article about her motives. "Smile," Anna said, tossing the magazine aside. "Why? So they can call me fake, too?" Clara didn't respond. Instead, she handed Anna an itinerary for the day: a charity gala, a meeting with some of Elon's colleagues, and another interview request. Anna sighed. "Cancel the interview," she said. "I can't keep pretending I know what to say about all this." Clara hesitated but nodded. One evening, while wandering the grounds, Anna met one of the gardeners, a kind older man named Hector. He had been with the estate long before Elon had purchased it. "You seem lost," Hector said as he pruned a rose bush. "That obvious, huh?" Anna replied, kneeling beside him. Hector chuckled. "This place can feel like a maze if you don't know where you're going." Anna picked at a stray leaf. "What if I don't know where I'm going anywhere? Not just here." Hector paused, studying her. "Sometimes, it's not about knowing the destination. It's about figuring out what matters along the way." Anna smiled faintly. "You sound like a fortune cookie." "Maybe," Hector said, grinning. "But it's the truth." That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Anna realized how suffocating the luxury around her felt. The crystal chandeliers, the silk sheets, the automated systems, it all seemed so hollow. She thought of her old life, working the late shift at McDonald's, laughing with her coworkers, sharing cheap wine with her roommates. It hadn't been glamorous, but had been real. Here, in the glass palace, nothing felt real, not even her husband. Anna wandered into the kitchen one afternoon, her thoughts tangled in a web of frustration and longing for clarity. The house was unusually quiet, with Elon out of town on a last-minute trip to oversee a SpaceX project. She was alone, save for the few staff members who moved like shadows, their presence barely noticeable. In search of something to distract herself, Anna decided to make coffee. She fumbled with a high-tech espresso machine, its countless buttons and screens more complicated than anything she'd ever seen. "Need help with that?" a voice asked from behind her. Anna turned to see Greg, one of the estate's butlers, smiling at her. He was in his mid-40s, with kind eyes and an easy demeanor that made him one of the few people in the house Anna felt comfortable around. "Honestly, I'd appreciate it," she said, stepping aside. Greg effortlessly navigated the machine, setting it to brew a perfect espresso. As they waited, he leaned casually against the counter. "You seem restless today," he said, handing her the freshly made coffee. Restless is my new normal, Anna replied, taking a sip. Greg hesitated, as if weighing whether to speak. Finally, he said, "You know, you've handled all this better than most people would. The attention, the scrutiny, it's not easy." Anna shrugged. "I don't think I've handled it at all, really. I'm just surviving." He nodded thoughtfully. "It's not every day someone like you ends up in a world like this, especially under the circumstances." His words struck a nerve. Anna set her cup down, staring at him. "What do you mean, under the circumstances?" Greg froze, clearly realizing he'd said too much. "I didn't mean—" "No," Anna interrupted, her voice firm. "Tell me, what circumstances?" Greg shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. "It's not my place." "Greg," she said, her tone insistent. "If there's something I need to know, you need to tell me." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I overheard Mr. Musk talking to one of his friends a while back. They were joking about a bet or a dare. Something about proving a point. I didn't catch all the details, but it sounded like your marriage was parted." Anna felt the air leave her lungs. "A bet," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I don't know for sure," Greg said quickly, "but it's possible." Her mind raced, piecing together every interaction, every moment of Elon's detachment. It all clicked: the suddenness of his proposal, his clinical approach to their relationship, the way he'd brushed off her concerns. Without another word, Anna left the kitchen, her heart pounding in her chest. She marched up the grand staircase and into Elon's office, slamming the door behind her. Though the room was empty, she could feel his presence in the cold, calculated order of the space. Blueprints for rockets and solar projects cluttered his desk, alongside notebooks filled with complex equations. But nothing personal, nothing human. When Elon returned that evening, Anna was waiting for him in the living room. Her arms were crossed, and her expression was a storm barely contained. "Good evening," he said casually, setting down his bag. "Is it true?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut through the air. Elon froze. "Is what true?" "Our marriage," she said, stepping closer. "Was it a bet, a challenge from your friends?" He hesitated, the slightest flicker of guilt crossing his face. "Answer me," Anna shouted. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping. "It wasn't a bet," he said carefully. "It was a challenge, but not in the way you think." "Then explain it to me," Anna snapped, her voice trembling. "Because right now, I feel like I've been nothing but a pawn in your game." Elon met her gaze, his own expression unreadable. "In the beginning, yes. It started as a challenge, a way to prove something to myself and others. But it's more than that now. More than that." Anna scoffed. "You've barely looked at me since the wedding. You don't even try to connect. And now I find out this whole thing was just some kind of twisted social experiment." "It's not that simple," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Then make it simple," she yelled. "Tell me the truth, Elon. Do you even care about me at all? Or was this just another project for you to control?" For a moment, he said nothing, his silence louder than any words could have been. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't expect to care about you," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I do." Anna shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "You don't even know how to carry Elon. All you know is how to win." She turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, leaving him standing alone in the silence. That night, as she packed a small suitcase in the guest room she'd moved into weeks ago, Anna knew one thing for certain: she couldn't stay. Not in this house. Not in this marriage. Not with a man who saw her as nothing more than a piece of some grand puzzle. By the time the sun rose, Anna was gone. The familiar scent of fryer oil and stale coffee greeted Anna as she stepped through the doors of her old McDonald's. It was a far cry from the glittering world she had left behind, but in its simplicity, there was a strange comfort. The staff fell silent as they noticed her. Some stared, while others exchanged whispers. Her sudden departure from the public I had left people guessing, and now here she was, back where she'd started, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, with none of the polish she'd been forced to adopt in Elon's world. "Anna," came a voice from behind the counter. It was Maria, her old manager, a stout woman with a no-nonsense demeanor who had always treated Anna like family. Anna forced a smile. "Hey, Maria." Maria raised an eyebrow, wiping her hands on her apron. "Thought you'd be off sipping champagne in some mansion. What brings you back here?" Anna hesitated, feeling the weight of everyone's stares. "Just needed a reset," she said vaguely. Maria studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the break room. "Come on, let's talk." Once inside, Maria closed the door and turned to face her. "All right, spill it. What happened?" Anna sank into one of the plastic chairs, running a hand through her hair. "I walked out," she admitted. "The whole thing, it wasn't what I thought it would be." Maria sat down across from her, crossing her arms. "Did he hurt you?" "No," Anna said quickly. "Not physically, at least. It's just, he didn't marry me because he loved me. It was all part of some challenge, a way to prove a point, and I let myself believe it could be something real." Maria softened, her stern expression melting into one of sympathy. "That's rough, Mija, but you're better off figuring it out now than wasting years on someone who doesn't see your worth." Anna nodded, though her throat tightened at the thought. "I just feel so stupid. I thought maybe, I don't know, that I could matter to him." "You do matter," Maria said firmly, "but sounds like he's too wrapped up in his own world to see it. That's on him, not you." Anna smiled faintly, grateful for the older woman's bluntness. Returning to work at McDonald's felt like slipping on an old, worn-out pair of shoes. The motions were familiar, but they didn't fit quite the same anymore. Customers recognized her, their whispers and occasional rude comments biting more than she cared to admit. "Hey, isn't that Elon Musk's wife?" one teenager asked loudly as he placed his order. "Ex-wife," his friend corrected with a snicker. Anna clenched her jaw, forcing a polite smile. "Anything else with that?" Behind the counter, her co-workers tried to shield her from the attention, stepping in to take orders when things got too heated. But the gossip spread like wildfire. Customers lingered longer than usual, hoping to catch a glimpse of the woman who had walked away from one of the world's richest men. One afternoon, as Anna scrubbed a table in the dining area, an elderly woman approached her. "Excuse me, dear," the woman said, her voice soft and kind. Anna straightened, expecting another nosy question. "Yes." The woman smiled gently. "I just wanted to say that I think you're very brave. It takes a lot of strength to walk away from something that doesn't make you happy, no matter how shiny it looks on the outside." Anna's eyes welled with tears. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman nodded and left, her words lingering in Anna's mind long after she was gone. As the days turned into weeks, Anna began to settle back into the rhythm of her old life. She shared laughs with her coworkers, endured the occasional rude customer, and found solace in the simplicity of her routine. But at night, in the quiet of her modest apartment, the memories of her time with Elon crept in. She thought of the way he'd looked at her during their wedding, the rare moments of vulnerability he'd shown, and the unanswered questions that still hung in the air. Was she just a fleeting chapter in his life? Or had she been something more, even if he couldn't admit it? For now, she tried to focus on rebuilding her own sense of self, away from the shadows of his glass palace. But deep down, she couldn't help but wonder if their story was truly over, or if there was still more left to uncover. The familiar hum of the McDonald's fryers filled the air as Anna worked behind the counter, focused on the rhythm of taking orders and packing meals. It had been months since she'd returned, and though her life was simpler now, it was far from uncomplicated. The whispers and stares had diminished, but the occasional snide comments still pierced through her carefully crafted defenses. It was a quiet afternoon when the doorbell chimed, signaling another customer. Anna glanced up from the register and froze. There he was, Elon Musk, standing in the fluorescent light of a restaurant, looking both out of place and strangely vulnerable. He wore a simple gray sweater and jeans, but his presence was impossible to ignore. Conversations around the dining area stuttered to a halt as heads turned, phones discreetly raised to snap pictures. Anna felt her stomach drop. She hadn't seen or heard from him since the morning she'd left his mansion. "Hi, Anna," Elon said, his voice calm but tinged with an unfamiliar softness. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone sharper than she intended. "I came to talk," he replied, ignoring the stares around them. "Can we sit somewhere?" Anna glanced at Maria, who was working the next register. The older woman nodded subtly, a silent cue that she'd cover for her. "Fine," Anna muttered, stepping out from behind the counter. She led Elon to a small booth in the corner of the dining area, where they sat across from each other. His expression was unusually somber, his hands clasped tightly on the table. "You shouldn't be here," Anna said quietly, avoiding his gaze. "I know," Elon admitted, "but I had to see you. I've been thinking about you. About everything." Anna folded her arms, her defenses rising. "Thinking about what, exactly?" "How you turned my life into a public spectacle. How you made me feel like a prop in your experiment." Elon winced, the words clearly cutting deep. "You're right. I deserve that," he said. "I was wrong. About everything. I didn't realize what I was risking until you were gone." Anna's brow furrowed, her skepticism evident. "Why now, Elon? Why show up here after all this time?" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because I didn't understand what I had until I lost it. I thought I could compartmentalize everything. My work, my life, even you. But I can't. You're not just a footnote in my story, Anna. You're more than that." Anna let out a bitter laugh. "You're only saying that because your experiment failed." Elon shook his head. "It wasn't an experiment to me anymore. Not after I got to know you. You didn't try to know me," she snapped. "You treated me like I was just another piece of your grand plan. And when I needed you to be there, to show me I mattered, you didn't." He leaned forward, his voice low but urgent. "You're right. I didn't know how to be what you needed. But I want to try now. I don't care about proving anything to anyone anymore. I just want you to give me another chance." Anna stared at him, her emotions a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and a flicker of something she couldn't name. She wanted to believe him, to think that his words were more than just damage control. But after everything she'd been through, trusting him felt impossible. "You don't get to show up here and say all the right things, Elon," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't get to fix this with a few apologies." "I know," he said softly, "but I'm willing to work for it, however long it takes." Anna stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You should go," she said, her tone firm despite the lump in her throat. Elon didn't argue. He rose slowly, his eyes filled with a rare vulnerability. "I'll leave," he said, "but this isn't the end, Anna. I'll prove to you that I can be better." She watched as he turned and walked out, his broad shoulders slumped in a way she'd never seen before. The moment he left, the room buzzed with hushed murmurs and furtive glances, but Anna ignored them. She returned to the counter, forcing herself to focus on her work, but her mind was far from the fast food orders piling up in front of her. For the first time in months, the tightly locked door in her heart cracked open, just slightly, leaving her with an unsettling mix of hope and doubt. Elon Musk, the man who had everything, was offering to fight for her. But was she ready to let him? The weeks after Elon's visit at McDonald's were a haze for Anna. Despite her attempts to push him out of her mind, his words lingered like a melody she couldn't forget. She threw herself into her routine, hoping the monotony would drown out the conflict in her heart. But life, as it often does, had other plans. One morning, Anna woke up feeling off. A dull wave of nausea hit her as she stood, forcing her to sit back down on the edge of her bed. She dismissed it as exhaustion, or perhaps the greasy fries she'd eaten the night before. But when the nausea persisted over the next few days, along with an unexpected wave of dizziness, she knew something wasn't right. Anna stopped at a pharmacy on her way home from work, her hands trembling as she picked up a pregnancy test. Back in her small bathroom, the fluorescent light buzzed faintly as she waited for the results. Her heart pounded in her chest, the minutes stretching into what felt like hours. Finally, she looked at the test. 2 lines. Anna's breath hitched. Her world spun as she gripped the edge of the sink for support. Pregnant, her mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. What did this mean for her? For the life she tried to rebuild? And for the man she'd left behind? Over the next week, Anna wrestled with the decision of whether to tell Elon. On one hand, he deserved to know. On the other, she feared how he would react. Would he see this as another complication in his carefully controlled life? Or would he try to take over, pulling her and the baby back into his world of wealth and scrutiny? Her decision was made for her when the news broke. One evening, while flipping through channels, Anna froze as a breaking news segment aired. The anchor, with a polished smile and dramatic tone, announced the headline. Sources claim Elon Musk's estranged wife, Anna Torres, is pregnant. The screen displayed grainy photos of Anna leaving a clinic, clutching what was unmistakably a bag from an OB/GYN office. Anna's phone lit up almost immediately with calls and texts. Reporters camped outside her apartment within the hour, their questions shouted through the thin walls. She felt trapped, her private life once again dragged into the spotlight. The next day, a sleek black car pulled up outside her building. Anna peered through her window and wasn't surprised to see Elon step out, flanked by 2 security guards. He waved them off, walking to her door alone. The knock came moments later. Anna opened the door reluctantly, her arms crossed. You couldn't call first. Elon's expression was serious, but his tone was gentle. I didn't think you'd answer. She sighed, stepping aside to let him in. Once inside, Elon wasted no time. Is it true? He asked, his voice laced with a mix of hope and fear. Anna nodded, her throat tightening. I was going to tell you, but not like this. The media beat me to it. For the first time, she saw Elon at a loss for words. He stared at her, his gaze flicking briefly to her stomach before meeting her eyes again. I don't know what to say, he admitted finally. Then don't say anything, Anna replied. I don't need anything from you, Elon. Not your money, not your influence. This is my baby, and I'll take care of it. His brow furrowed. Our baby, he corrected, his voice firm but not unkind. You're not doing this alone, Anna. I won't let you. Her frustration flared. You don't get to let me do anything. You don't get to swoop in now and act like you care. This isn't about you. Elon took a deep breath, his demeanor surprisingly calm. I know I've messed up, and I know I have a lot to prove to you, but this changes everything, Anna. I don't care about the media or what people think. I care about you, and I care about this child. Anna's defenses wavered as she searched his face for any hint of insincerity. For once, she couldn't find it. I don't trust you, she said finally, her voice soft but resolute. I don't expect you to, he replied, but I'm asking for the chance to earn it. Anna hesitated, the weight of his words settling over her. She didn't know if she could trust him, or if he was even capable of being the kind of partner and father that their child deserved. But one thing was certain, Elon Musk, for all his flaws and missteps, wasn't going to walk away from this. And whether she liked it or not, neither was she. Elon Musk was not a man accustomed to introspection. For years, his life had been defined by ambition, logic, and a relentless pursuit of progress. But the news of Anna's pregnancy changed something in him. For the first time, in as long as he could remember, his focus shifted from the cosmos to something far more grounded: fatherhood. The revelation set off a quiet revolution in Elon's life. He began reevaluating not just his relationship with Anna, but the way he approached the world. If he wanted to be part of his child's life, and Anna's, he knew he needed to change. At first, Elon's attempts to reform himself were small, almost imperceptible. He started attending therapy, something he had long dismissed as unnecessary. He began making time for quieter pursuits, reading books on emotional intelligence, parenting, and even poetry, a genre he had never before appreciated. More significantly, Elon started stepping back from the constant whirlwind of his business empire. He delegated more responsibilities to his teams at Tesla and SpaceX, giving himself the space to reflect. He also made an effort to reconnect with the people he claimed to care about. His inner circle noticed the change almost immediately. "Who are you and what have you done with Elon?" joked his brother, Kimball, during a rare family dinner. Elon simply smiled, just trying to be better. Determined to show Anna he was serious, Elon took a quieter, more hands-on approach to understanding her world. He visited shelters and food banks, learning about the struggles of people who lived lives vastly different from his own. He even started volunteering, anonymously of course, at community projects in the neighborhoods Anna once called home. During one such visit to a local outreach program, Elon met Carmen, a single mother juggling 2 jobs while raising her kids. As they chatted, Carmen unknowingly echoed something Anna had once said to him. "You can have all the money in the world," Carmen said, "but if you're not there for the people you love, what's the point?" The words hit him like a meteor. Anna, meanwhile, was doing her best to navigate her pregnancy alone. Despite her initial resolve to keep Elon at arm's length, his persistence was undeniable. He didn't shower her with gifts or try to force his way back into her life. Instead, he quietly showed up in ways that mattered. One morning, a care package arrived at Anna's apartment. Inside were practical items: prenatal vitamins, comfortable slippers, a pregnancy pillow, and a handwritten note. "Anna, I know I can't undo the past, but I'm here if you need anything." No strings attached. She didn't respond, but the gesture stayed with her. Weeks turned into months, and Elon's consistency began to wear down Anna's defenses. He attended her doctor's appointments without fail, always sitting quietly in the corner unless she invited him to speak. When the baby kicked for the first time during an ultrasound, Anna glanced at him and saw something she never expected: tears in his eyes. "I can't believe it," he murmured, staring at the screen. "That's our child." Anna's heart softened, though she wasn't ready to admit it. One evening, Elon showed up at the McDonald's just as Anna's shift ended. She was exhausted, her feet aching, but he insisted on walking her home. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked as they strolled through the dimly lit streets. "Because I want to be the kind of father my child can look up to," he said simply. "And because I still care about you, Anna, more than I've ever cared about anyone." She stopped in her tracks, staring at him. For once, there was no pretense in his voice, no calculated charm, just raw honesty. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she admitted. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just want a chance to prove I can be different. For you, for the baby, for us." Anna looked away, tears prickling her eyes. She didn't know if she could trust him yet, but for the first time, she saw a glimpse of the man he could be, the man he was trying to become. "One step at a time," she said finally. Elon nodded, a faint smile on his lips. One step at a time. As they continued walking, the faintest flicker of hope began to bloom between them. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like they might be walking it together. The neighborhood park buzzed with life, children laughing as they chased each other around the playground, joggers weaving through the winding paths, and families gathering for picnics under the shade of sprawling oak trees. Anna sat on a weathered bench near the basketball courts, her hands resting protectively on her growing belly. The warm spring breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. The community center behind her was hosting a charity event, a food drive for local families in need. Anna had reluctantly agreed to help out, wanting to distract herself from the ever-looming uncertainties of her life. But even surrounded by the comforting hum of her old neighborhood, her thoughts kept drifting to Elon. He'd been patient, unwavering in his efforts to prove himself, and though Anna hadn't openly acknowledged it, a small part of her was beginning to believe in his sincerity. Her musings were interrupted by a familiar voice. Still the hardest working woman in the room, Anna turned, startled. Elon stood a few feet away, dressed simply in jeans and a plain black shirt, holding a cardboard box filled with canned goods. There were no security guards, no press, and no trace of the usual polish that marked his presence. He looked ordinary. "What are you doing here?" Anna asked, her voice laced with equal parts surprise and suspicion. "I heard about the event," he said, setting the box down on the table next to her. "Thought I'd lend a hand." Anna raised an eyebrow. "You helping at a food drive?" He smirked, wiping his hands on his jeans. "I'm full of surprises." She shook her head, a reluctant smile tugging at her lips. "You're going to break your billionaire image if you're not careful." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," he replied, his tone earnest. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Elon worked alongside Anna, sorting donations, carrying boxes, and chatting with volunteers. At first, his presence caused a stir. Several people stopped to confirm that, yes, it really was Elon Musk unpacking cans of beans and chatting with their neighbors. But as the hours wore on, the novelty wore off, and he became just another pair of hands helping out. Anna watched him closely, noting the way he seemed genuinely engaged, asking questions and listening to people's stories. He wasn't just putting on a show, he was trying. As the event wound down and the last of the boxes were loaded into a truck, Elon approached Anna again. "Can we talk?" he asked, his expression serious. Anna hesitated but nodded, leading him to a quieter corner of the park. They sat on a bench beneath a blooming cherry tree, its pink blossoms fluttering in the breeze. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "You're different," Anna said finally, breaking the silence. "I'm trying to be," Elon replied. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to move forward. With you. With our child." Anna looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers nervously. "It's not just about the baby, Elon. It's about trust. About knowing that I can count on you. Not just when things are easy, but when they're hard." "I understand that now," he said quietly. "And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn that trust back. No shortcuts. No grand gestures. Just time." She studied him, searching his face for any hint of insincerity. For the first time, she saw none. "I want to believe you," she admitted, "but I'm scared. What if you can't keep this up? What if you fall back into your old ways?" Elon reached out, hesitating before gently taking her hand. "Then I'll pick myself back up and try again," he said. "Because this time, it's not just about me. It's about you and our family." Anna felt tears welling in her eyes, but she didn't pull her hand away. For so long, she'd kept her guard up, convinced that letting him in again would only lead to more pain. But now, for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope. "I'm not promising anything," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "But I'll give you the chance to prove yourself." Elon nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "That's all I'm asking for." As they sat together beneath the cherry tree, the weight of their shared history hung between them. But so did the promise of something new, a chance to rebuild, one step at a time. Months later, the world around Anna seemed both familiar and foreign. She sat in the nursery of her modest apartment, its soft pastel walls bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. A simple wooden crib stood in the corner, filled with tiny blankets and plush toys. As she gently folded baby clothes, her thoughts wandered to the journey that had brought her here, one filled with heartbreak, healing, and an unexpected chance at something more. A soft knock on the door broke her reverie. "Come in," she called, her voice steady but curious. The door opened, and Elon stepped inside, carrying a small box wrapped in silver paper. He looked different now, more grounded, more at ease in his own skin. "Hey," he said, his tone warm but tentative. "Hey," Anna replied, setting the clothes aside. He held out the box, his lips curving into a faint smile. "I brought something for the baby." Anna took the box, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a small, hand-carved wooden mobile adorned with stars and planets, each one painted in soft, calming colors. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice catching slightly. "I made it," Elon admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, I helped. One of the guys in my engineering team walked me through it." Anna laughed softly, running her fingers over the tiny planets. "I didn't know you were so handy." "I'm full of surprises," he said with a chuckle, echoing the words he'd spoken at the park months ago. As the baby's due date approached, Anna and Elon found themselves falling into an easy rhythm. Though she was cautious about fully trusting him, she couldn't deny that he'd proven himself in countless small ways, attending birthing classes, helping with a nursery, and simply being present in a way she hadn't expected. He still had his quirks, of course. Once, during a class on diaper-changing techniques, he'd launched into an impromptu lecture on creating a self-cleaning diaper. Elon, Anna had said, suppressing a laugh. Not everything needs to be a tech revolution. Sometimes you just need to use wipes. Fair point, he'd replied, grinning sheepishly. The day finally arrived on a crisp autumn morning. After hours of labor, Anna gave birth to a healthy baby boy. As she held him for the first time, her heart swelled with an overwhelming mix of love and relief. Elon sat beside her, his usually composed demeanor replaced with pure awe. When the nurse handed him the baby, he cradled his son with a tenderness Anna hadn't seen before. "Hi, little guy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm your dad." Anna watched as tears filled his eyes, her own emotions threatening to spill over. "You did good," she said softly, her exhaustion giving way to a small, genuine smile. "So did you," Elon replied, his gaze never leaving the baby. In the weeks that followed, their lives settled into a new kind of chaos. Late-night feedings, diaper changes, and the constant hum of exhaustion became their reality. But through it all, Anna saw a side of Elon she hadn't known existed, a man who was patient, nurturing, and fully invested in their little family. One evening, as they sat on the couch with the baby sleeping in Elon's arms, Anna finally let herself say the words she'd been holding back. "You've changed," she said quietly. He looked at her, his expression serious. "Because of you," he admitted. "You showed me what really matters." She smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I'm glad you figured it out. For both of us." Their journey was far from perfect, but it was real. Together, they built a life grounded not in wealth or status, but in the small, everyday moments that made them a family. And as they watched their son grow, Anna knew she had found something she never expected, a love that, though unconventional, was worth holding on to. This was their new beginning, messy, imperfect, and entirely their own.